The Y Curve with Phil Dobby and Roger Hearing.
Remember Ukraine?
The biggest land war in Europe since 1945?
The conflict that defined the power rivalry of the 21st century, tens of thousands dead, and billions spent on the latest weaponry to hold back Vladimir Putin.
Our attention turned to the Gaza fighting, but where have things got to in Ukraine?
There are mentions of stalemate, suggestions that the US, facing multiple crises and entering an election year, would like to push President Zelenskyy into a negotiated peace, that this is now an unwinnable war.
Is that true? Where are the front lines now, and can Kiev win back the land that Moscow took?
What's next for Ukraine?
The Y Curve.
So there was a YouGov survey which came into my inbox in the last week that showed that people in Britain think no side has the advantage in this war. Only 9% think Ukraine has the advantage. I mean, but there again, what are people feeling in YouGov surveys?
I was going to say, it may not be the most reliable measure.
In the same email, there was a bit about, how many middle-class people like sourdough bread. So,
right, yeah.
So that's, maybe we can dismiss
I think you might have to adjust some of your perspective.
Yeah, maybe. But, I mean, it does seem like, from what we're picking up, no one is winning this war.
Well, the word stalemate has certainly been put around, and this is what we need to sort of find out. Have we got to the stage where actually this is a frozen conflict, where, people throw missiles at each other, but no one really gains any ground, and it just goes on forever? Because the awful truth is that the Europeans and the US and Britain, who've been really backing Ukraine, are feeling their resources are not necessarily achieving what they want.
Yeah.
But, of course, the issue is for Vladimir Putin. Can you allow this man to take land, entirely illegal war, and hang on to it?
Well, I mean, being cynical about it all, the only reason a politician like a UK politician, for example, would be supporting it is because they see mileage in it domestically. And if it's not front and focus of the news here, then there's less reason to be so supportive.
But also the narrative, don't forget, in the first year or so of the war was very much plucky little Ukraine, fighting back, pushing back, heroically defending. And I mean, it still is. Yeah. And it definitely is the case. But it's not quite the narrative of a dynamic narrative that was there that Boris Johnson attached himself to.
And is it a false hope? So, I'm reading bits saying that, or maybe Zelenskyy hasn't got the support domestically now either, because people feel as though he has, it's an all or nothing war as far as he's concerned. And perhaps, people in the military and the citizens are starting to say, well, maybe that's not going to be achievable.
Well, the price is so high. This is the thing. I was talking to a Ukrainian friend a couple of days ago who lives here, and he says he's lost 8 friends in the last few months. So because everybody has signed up. So many people, not just ordinary soldiers, but people who signed up altogether to go and fight. And many of the course are dying. And you're taking out a great tranche of huge talent, really, because the fighting goes on.
Yeah, just how far would you go? How much would you fight for your country? I wonder. It's a good question to ask ourselves. So if Britain was invaded and you could go and chuff off to somewhere else, would you stay and fight, or would you be on the first British Airways flight down to Australia?
And if we were being
I'm not going to answer that because I don't want to lose half our audience.
No, I think I think we all know which way you'd go pretty rapidly. In fact, you may even be purchasing your ticket now. But no, I mean, it's a key question because, this war is about so much more than Ukraine itself. It's about the whole confrontation between the kind of government that Vladimir Putin leads, allied with Iran and indeed China, and the rest, who still cling on to the idea of liberal democracy and all that stands for. And, this is a clash of ideologies. Who's going to win?
And a liberal democracy seems like quite a nice thing to hang on to, doesn't it?
You would think.
Remember early on, the question was, if we let Putin win this, what would he do next? Would he go to Finland, for example? There's, I've read pieces saying, well, maybe that's going to be next, because it gives what Crimea gave him. It gives him a freshwater port.
Yeah, it's very different in the sense.
Freshwater, ice-free port, I should say, not a freshwater port, where he can, so he's got more free trade with the rest of the world.
But it's very different because one of the things with Crimea is it had a fairly substantial population who identify as Russian. So he wasn't pushing it that closed a door in terms of that, let alone obviously international legitimacy, but. And I think there is different, but nonetheless, the lesson is given. If this ends in a negotiation and Putin hangs on to bits of Ukraine that he's taken, power, force works. If you hang on to it long enough, the West gets bored and moves on.
Yeah, then he waits 5 years and decides what he's going to do next. Absolutely.
We'll but anyway, let's talk to someone who's studied this and knows a lot about it. In fact, is indeed Ukrainian himself. And that's Igor Shchebetun, who is a doctoral researcher in security at Sumy State University in Ukraine. Actually, currently, he's in Chicago. And he joins us now.
Well, Igor, we are seeing less and less about what is happening in Ukraine. So bring us up to speed. Where exactly are we now militarily?
Can describe with one statement, shortage of everything. Shortage of everything, and we don't see this gaining of this amount of, the decent amount of armory and resources even to save these territories that we have for now, for this day.
Right. So because of that, are things going backwards then? Is Ukraine losing some of the territory that it's perhaps gained?
Ukraine is not
or regained.
For now, Ukraine can remain these territories. So for now, again, but we don't see that amount of weapon and support that we used to have. So right now it goes down. So that's why.
So you're saying there's not so much weapons coming in from the West, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Shortage of everything, not just weapon, but also just regular vehicles. So that's the reason.
And when we look at where the forces are now, Ukraine has a front line. In obviously all along, is there a sense that Ukraine is gaining territory in any way, or is it static? Is it not moving?
No, we're at a stalemate.
I don't believe in that. I just count in mathematics and just numbers. I don't see these numbers. So Zelenskyy is a head commander. He demanded 500 tanks for starting moving forward. He was given less than 300, 700 artillery. He was given 300 something. So everything less than half.
This is a Ukrainian commander, yes?
He's the main commander, General Zelenskyy. So he got everything less. North Korea delivered to Russia bad quality shells, but anyway, 1 million shells. Maybe it still goes like to that number, but anyway, close to 1 million in a very short term. West, less than 300,000 shells. Third part, but we were promised with a 1 million.
Which Russia is getting.
So Igor, clearly not enough is getting through, but what is the consequence? So where the troops are they moving forward at all, or are they just staying where they are?
Because there is no mention about a stalemate, was staying where they are, because Zelenskyy was interviewed by The Economist this last week, and he talked about a stalemate. He said it was only going to be broken now by some sort of technological breakthrough, like we saw in the First and Second World War. If we don't see that sort of breakthrough, which we're not going to see, then we are going to be stuck with where we are.
Yeah, for example, drone war. So we were in front of that, invasion, I would say. So we started moving. We invented new concept of war with the drones. Drones were made with just handmade, whatever you have in the hands, no material. But right now, Russia presented helicopter. Russia presented new concept of drones. And the amount of these drones are huge. So we are not in front in technology right now. So that's why we are staying.
So what does that mean? Does that mean that from now until perhaps early next year, because obviously the weather isn't good there either, the front lines will stay where they are?
Oh, yeah, it's not because of the weather. Not at all. For example, the south part, where close to Crimea, we can move, and actually it's pretty clear. And also not that this territory can be used in the winter time, but also close to Avdiivka, Donetsk region. Right now, Ukrainian troops have potential ability to go on the roads, because there is some Avdiivka, which is almost like under the siege. It's under Ukraine right now, but it's surrounded. So this key city can be used as a platform to move forward on the roads, on the pretty dry surface. But nobody could use nobody used this advantage because of the shortage of the weapon. So we still.
I see. So you're saying they have the capacity to do it, but again, it's the shortage of weapons.
That's why.
So, for example, in the Kherson area, where we know they did go south and they did get just over the river, that is not going to expand. There's not going to be an expansion in the near future because they simply haven't got what they need.
Yeah. It's not because of the weather, because of the shortage of the weapon.
And is that because Russia is now throwing more weapons at it? So we've heard more about drone attacks by Russia? No?
No, definitely no. We know in the statistic. Russia can accumulate renovated tanks, not more than 50 tanks per month. their casualties in tanks, like in average, from 5 to 10 per day. So it's not that they produce. They have a lot of resources, but they're not growing up so that we have a lower rate in our amount of the weapons because we don't have enough, at least.
So it seems like what you're saying is if the West was to step up its support and provide more hardware, this war could be won.
No, not completely. Nobody gonna allow Russia conquer Ukraine and to hold its territory. No, for sure. But nobody gonna allow Ukraine to win because of their policy. I think the biggest mistake, international policy of Ukraine. All mistakes they made, we can went through them if you would like to. And all interests of West.
So you're saying there's an interest from the West in this war not being won. Is that what you're saying?
I think it's just about surveillance and money, and that's it. Just profitable or not profitable.
Okay, I mean, we can talk about the West's motivations, perhaps, but in terms of Ukraine itself, so if it is stuck in this position, it doesn't have enough weapons, it can hold the line for the moment against the Russians. What happens next? Is there a negotiated way out of this, then?
100%. 100%, and actually, our foreign minister said so that actually he officially stated that West will force us to sit at the table and negotiate till fall. But I think that's going to be much faster.
So you think there will be a negotiated solution? But if there is Russia then allowed to keep some of the territory it's taken?
Russia right now like a piece of pie, so they are on top right now. They try to offer and they try to trade their interest between China and West. Whoever are going to make a deal agreement, for example, right now they negotiate with the CIA, and again, they are not hiding that process with Naryshkin and some other officials, the speaker, I guess, speaker of their parliament.
Naryshkin is who?
Naryshkin is a speaker, and another person, Patrushev. Patrushev, I forgot what he leads, but actually he tend to be second person in the government after Putin. So he pretends to be.
Right.
Yeah, so it's pretty key.
So there are Russians who are moving towards some sort of negotiations on this at the moment.
Yeah, they try to sell, for example, they have a lot to sell. If we're going to compare the amount what Russia can bring to the West, and basically they are closer to the West civilization than to East. So definitely they can offer raw materials. They can give approach to the Arctic belt. So they have a lot to offer. So they, in comparison with Ukraine can offer just resources and that's it. But Russia can offer more resources. If needed to Putin, they can replace. If not needed, so it's fine. Why it's not needed? Because he's the key person. He holds the power. He holds the state. His orders are executed for sure. Yes, he's.
So to be absolutely clear, what you're saying here, Igor, you're saying that behind the scenes, or perhaps not that much behind the scenes, the West is opening talks with the Russians to find some sort of negotiated way out of this war right now.
Right. So it sounds like the negotiation then is what the West wants rather than what Ukraine wants.
Again, the West doesn't want just itself negotiation. They want to get profit. The negotiation is just an instrument. Want to get safety, profit, and in the future to fulfill their strategy.
But the West has dictated, as Igor has said, that it wants Ukraine to win. That has been absolutely clear publicly by the US, the EU, the UK. They've all said we want Ukraine to win this one, and you're saying that that's not true anymore.
Yeah, I knew you want to ask that question, but it's again, I'm a realist person. So if you're gonna have a look at the amount in mathematics, it doesn't match these proclaimed statements. So they say, yeah, that's true, but in the same time, they didn't move out their capital. They didn't give enough weapon. They still didn't allow us to this spring, not the spring, but this summer to hit something on Russian territory. They didn't give us ATACMS. They didn't give anything. But do they have abilities? Yeah, I can bring all the statistics they have. They have 400 million shells. Was very difficult to deliver at least 1 million, but they promised. No. 30 tanks from US, 5,000 they have in the year.
So you're saying they're starving Ukraine of these resources deliberately, is what you're saying?
Yeah, of course they can't say officially. Nobody say, "Oh, okay, we're gonna push our interests and we're gonna follow our direction that we just created like 10 years ago, our strategy." And this strategy, maybe some interest of Ukraine will match our interest. And so, in terms of this line, so yeah, we're definitely gonna help them out. If they're gonna say that, they will not be at the power anymore.
So if the US is starving the resources in the hope that this war will reach some sort of truce, what is in it for the US in reaching that arrangement?
So they already say that as long as Ukraine want to fight, we're gonna support them. Do they support? Yeah, do they support? Do they support enough to win? No. Like to remain this territory? Yes. What it could be? Russia wants to get maximum just 5 regions, what they partially occupied it, and some of them are not partially. So 5 regions. What US wants to hold this conflict, to freeze this conflict, to stop it, negotiate, to change in Russia the head leader, the power, and to start pull them towards them and making them a rival, maybe with another state, but anyway, make them a rival, make it clear so they will not be straight confrontation. So let's make a safe, let's say, line in Ukraine with 100 kilometers, put NATO bloc on there and control this territory, move out, like back out all the weapons. And so that's how they can control this territory.
So you're saying the United States wants a kind of frozen conflict, in effect.
That looks like
something where no one's being killed, but nothing much is happening.
Yeah, just remain as, and that's it.
Okay, now what we haven't heard in any of this is, what does Ukraine want? What does President Zelenskyy want? Is President Zelenskyy in a strong position to dictate what comes out of this?
And has he still got that support domestically? Because he has all the way along been, this is an all or nothing conflict. I mean, he's not going to want to back out or freeze the situation. He's going for the whole thing.
Right. And if you allow me a few minutes to explain why, and then, I'm going to answer on that question. So why does that happen? Because of the lack of the decision in international level. So they didn't build the government, Ukrainian government didn't build as a state, on a state level, the country on a state level. Why? In Bulgaria, there was not needed to create the schematic, share the schematic to deliver some weapon, but needed to create some contracts. They say about contracts, but nothing has been signed and nothing has been created till nowadays. From 2014, so war still in the hot, like still remains, right? We didn't create any tanks, any aircrafts, any vessels that support any helicopters. Do we have this infrastructure? Yes. Can we build this in Poland and Bulgaria, in Hungary? Can we eliminate all discrepancies and all the confrontation with Poland? Yes. Historical confrontation. Why didn't do that? They didn't do that. They rejected all projects with China before the huge war before 2022. They rejected all the projects with China. So would it be better to invite China, Great Britain, Saudi Arabia, any other allies, and to have them have some piece of pie, which is Ukrainian resources and everything, infrastructure as well, and at the same time to protect country. So they will protect, they will be a rival. For what happened right now, so Ukraine just tried to sell itself, whoever gonna pay, and rules by moderators from external power. So they don't build still corruption on a huge level. So they don't produce any shell. For 6 years, they couldn't do anything. So that's why he's in a bad position right now.
So why is Zelenskyy in a bad position? What is the problem with his support?
The problem, he's just trying to demand that everyone has to support Ukraine. But you have to first build this relation that other country wants to be a rival, wants to, let's say, he overlapping interest in Ukraine by Germany, he overlapping interests from Germany on France. So on one statement, he said, Armenia has to have their Karabakh in their own possession. And on the other hand, Azerbaijan supported us. Nobody wants to come to Ukraine on February, I guess. Yeah, and Aliyev, head leader of Azerbaijan, he said that we with you. Turkey, again, why they have some contradictions with Turkey. Turkey supported us. So they don't have to just demand.
So you're saying Zelenskyy hasn't handled this very well, hasn't handled his international relationships well?
Definitely. Signed the contracts, Talk to the Hungary. Why didn't talk? Or said, okay, so please, Great Britain or United States, push on Hungary and make them silence and support us, whatever whatever costs you. But they have some interests. They have their own projects.
So it sounds like, I mean, it's at a very simplistic level, it's all been about, well, we've got to win this war because otherwise what will Putin do next? And that was sort of what won the argument with the West. But it sounds like what you're saying is there's not been enough of a discussion about, well, say we do win, what does the world look like then? What are our relationships beyond that?
I think change power in Russia. Right now they say they give a hint. The Russia officials, if you need to make some adjustments, we can negotiate. We need access to trade our raw materials. We need access to finance market, and we want to cooperate with you. Why the US is not very interested into that? Because Ukraine will be very good instrument to control Russia. If Russia goes too far or not obey, so they don't want to, they play their own game, can be pushed let's say West can push on Ukraine and can remain those sanctions. And anything, not just sanctions, but in general, in political world, so they can just push on them. It's just control them through Ukraine.
I see what you're saying about that relationship and this kind of, they mutually need each other. But still, coming back to Ukraine itself, you're saying President Zelensky's in a weak position. So he will have to accept a deal that means that some parts of Ukraine effectively are now going to be run by Russia in the future. Is that what you're saying?
According to numbers, what we have right now on the table, and we can see the amount of help, yes, just according to that. Do we have perspective to win? Definitely yes.
Well, you're saying it's according to the numbers. So the numbers that you're referring to are the numbers in terms of how much weaponry there is and how many people there are to be able to win territory. Are they the numbers that you're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. I can give you exact numbers. What Zelenskyy?
No, but the numbers you're saying are the ones that are the resources essentially that are there. But going back to Zelenskyy, so if he has to come to some sort of solution that involves the loss of so much territory from Ukraine, can he stay in power? Will politics resume as normal in Ukraine? Is that what's going to happen?
No, definitely no. And actually, that's going to be again profitable for the peace treaty. So why? It's going to be very difficult to sit them at the same table, Putin and Zelenskyy. It's very difficult. It would be very difficult. It's personal attitude. So
almost impossible, I should think.
Possibly, yeah, but it would be better to have another state, another officials, another point of view, and so people can eat these bait. So yeah, it's something else.
So will Putin be sitting at that table though?
As conspiracy theory said that there are three Putins, but it doesn't matter. Putin Putin actually contains this strategy. Will it be Putin? Will it be Patrushev? Doesn't matter. For business, it will be better not having Putin there. But for remaining Russia as a state, because nobody is interested that Russia just fall apart right away. It's going to be chaos. So yeah, it's acceptable for 100%, but not Zelenskyy. Zelenskyy maybe for first step of negotiation, maybe with the third countries, yes, but again, not eventually.
So it all sounds a bit depressing, but most depressing out of all of it is almost that this is a country which is almost getting chalked up to meet the interests of everybody apart from the country itself.
Unfortunately, yeah.
And I wonder whether the West has learned a bit, is cautious about all of this because there's been so many cases in the past where they've helped a power and then that power has turned to a force for evil. I'm not saying that would be the case for Zelenskyy, but this big fear that if you give a country too much control, then the West sees that as a dangerous situation. Do you think that's part of what's going on here?
Yeah, exactly. But again, the West part of the world, they consider everything from the business perspective, and unfortunately, they say different things. So they say, yeah, we're gonna protect you, we're gonna stand with you as long as we can, but we have some difficulties with delivery your help, but everything. But just the numbers: 30 tanks,
And what about the people of Ukraine? I mean, what's their attitude towards Zelenskyy as they see, the number of people? I mean, what is it? 100,000 people are the numbers I've heard. If I heard 100,000 on each side as the number of people killed, but who knows? Certainly 100,000 out of 37 million is more than 100,000 out of 140 million or however many people are in Russia. So, I mean, people must reach a point where they start saying, well, enough. We've seen so many of our relatives being killed. Support for this war domestically has got to start to wane at some point, hasn't it?
Oh, Ukraine actually stands, as I see, Ukraine stands for Zelenskyy, because my cousins right now are fighting on the front line. One of them in infantry, one of them is in artillery. So everyone is ready. Everyone is ready, to turn Russia's apart. So they still ready. They can't move back. So they want revenge. So they're ready to fight. Maybe some other people who wants to have just a peaceful life, but again, they are not. Maybe they are majority. Who knows?
That's very interesting. That the feeling is still as strong as that.
But they would be horrified, wouldn't they? I mean, your cousins. The idea that for all the fighting that's gone on, this ends with some sort of truce where they haven't won, and really, as you say, the interests perhaps in that truce are perhaps less about their own country.
So they say huge massacre. And they don't understand why we have shortage of weapons if everyone said in the world that we support you. So this is the only thing they say.
Interesting.
We can consider it from the weak part, from the strong part, but this is the truth, what they say, and not just they. I have a lot of relatives, and actually I'm a first-class lieutenant in artillery in reserve, so I know what they are talking about.
And I think it's true, Igor, also. Didn't you serve or had some experience in the Russian forces? Is that right?
Oh, Russian forces, it's different. It's a totally different story.
But what?
I'm fluent in Russian language, but...
the question I wanted to ask is, what about the other side? What about the Russian military, the Russian setup? Do you think they can keep going as well? Because obviously Russian losses are huge, and there's been a lot of discontent about the way the Russian forces have operated, a lot of internal discontent, as we know from the Prigozhin mutiny. Do you think they can keep going or not?
Yeah, very good question. Actually, it's pretty simple answer. Yes, 100% yes, because if you have a look at the history, how USSR won Second World War, if you're the soldier in the trench, so then you want to go in front of the line, doesn't matter, they're going to kill you and that's it. Nobody knows the truth. So they still live with the idea that we need to help Russians who are in Ukraine. They're struggling because of the Nazi. See how propaganda is well. The ex-KGB rulers, they still lead the country. And in the propaganda, they're masters. Goebbels is, it's just a kid.
So you think the Russians would keep going just because they believe all these things they are told by
just
Putin?
Because of the propaganda. Mm-hmm.
And despite the losses, because there's so many have been killed.
The losses. No, doesn't matter. Despite the losses, nobody knows about these losses. Just we know about that.
Right, but meanwhile, you're saying behind the scenes, Russia is talking to the West and saying that we will arrive at some sort of amicable solution that's going to stop this war. And so Russia wins from that point of view. Putin saves face. He's negotiated an arrangement where he's won. The West sees less of a war and, bad luck Ukraine. And all those people who fought and lost their lives, that 100,000 people, including your cousins, have been fighting for nothing.
Yeah, all treaties actually signed in history, if we're going to have a look, for expenses of weak. Who is the weak? Ukraine. Just resources. Just again, maybe it's not a popular statement. I don't know. Maybe some other people gonna say that I don't support. I don't believe. No, I'm considering everything through numbers. If I would be more than happy if that happened. That if West start giving us what we need, at least to remain in this territory. But we try to be creative. To create some robotic small cars on remote control and deliver some weapon to Russia trenches. It's insane. I don't know. We don't use military industry. We just create ourselves. So I'm trying to expose the drawbacks and trying to expose that these. It's not ideology. New ideology support Ukraine, support democracy. It's not true. Basically, it's not because the Ukraine or something like that. It's a common theme that appears from the facts that we just mentioned, and also Russia.
Do you feel angry, Igor, that all the promises that the West made, then are not being fulfilled. Does that make you feel that your country has been betrayed by the West?
On the first hand, like on the first feeling that I just got my mind on, so yeah, definitely I can consider in that way. But in general, if in my occupation, I do a lot of research. I work in international relations and try to stick with this path, and also working at my PhD. And all my 10 years, I try to not to try to understand, but you can't divide if you are on a diplomatic way. If you work with international institutions, you can't say by according to ideology something bad, something wrong. No, it's not that way. It's because of the interests. So you have to build your strategy, your next steps to match some interest, even if it's allies. You can't just say, I want to win, I want to demand the help and everything to help from you and everything. You can't just demand. You have to work at that and match interests.
Right. So I'm still unclear about what those interests are from the United States or most of the West then, apart from, is it just a case of simply, well, with Russia, we don't want to poke the bear. We don't want them to get angry. We want to try and get to a situation where we reach peace. Is that it? Is that basically the end line?
No, it's not it at all. It just, for now, that's it. Okay, they have a platform to negotiate. Do the West still gonna have the instrument to push on Russia just in case they are not obey? Or yes, they do. Do they have all the resources and a potential rival against China? Yeah. Will they remain Russia strong enough, but not enough to move forward to West, but strong enough to be, as a watchman close to Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, close to China, remain these borders? Yeah, for now, yeah, pretty clear.
So you see NATO bases moving into Ukraine, for example?
Not the bases, but actually, they're just the peacemakers from different sides. Not the
peacekeepers
as a rival. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Okay, I mean, as we draw this to a conclusion, Igor, as a Ukrainian, what do you think will happen if we were to take 2 years, 3 years, 4 years?
The sequence of
out?
events would be interesting. So if you think Zelenskyy, for example, will be replaced and some treaty will be arrived at, which of those two things happens first? Does Zelenskyy have to go before you can arrive at that treaty, and who's going to replace him?
Oh, good question. You want me to anticipate? Okay, let's predict that. Okay, so what we see right now, Kuleba, foreign ministry, he said, we will go to that point that West forced us to make a treaty. Zelenskyy said, we need another piece of help. He wants to remain in his position, and he wants to survive. He said, whether we need some new elections or no, maybe we have to push it away, this idea, because of the war. A lot of people just moved out from the country, and we have to keep up somehow. So it's going to be difficult. Maybe we're going to hold in that position. If he holds a country in the situation, in that situation what we have right now, he will be forced to sign the treaty because of the reasons we discussed before. Just a supportive fact for that, he just moved to Spain, asked about a 4-launcher system to defense air. For president, can you imagine? Can president go there to ask for launcher system?
So he asked for a launcher system from Spain?
Yeah, just 4 of them. The president is a president at level. Definitely no. So definitely he's losing his positions every day. Yeah. So either or, there's going to be a treaty with him or without him.
And how quickly is that going to happen? Is that going to be a 2024 thing?
Yeah, within the next year. And before elections, I think in the United States, because nobody gonna ruin this atmosphere elections, because if the war will remain that, so Democrats who lead right now all these protests, especially supporting Ukraine, so they're gonna lose their score, so they can represent some good results. We stop the war, we sit them at the table, we stop conflict in Europe, we still have instrument push on Russia. Russia is under control. China will not take some part of Russia, maybe in the future, yeah, but not right now. So we bring peace. We solve the problem. Biden is nice president or somebody else from the Democratic Party. Everything is pretty tasty. Looks like tasty. It's a nice product.
That works better. And your country...
Everybody wins apart from the Ukrainians.
Well, I was going to say, looking forward, Igor, as we bring this to a conclusion. If you were to look 2 to 3 years out, you would see your country with bits taken out of it by Russia pretty much permanently.
No, they will not allow to do that, for sure. So that's why these conflicts have to remain.
They will force Russia to move out of the territory it's conquered.
Eventually, presumably.
Yes, through Ukraine. So that's why Ukraine conflict is profitable for them, to make it frozen. But if necessary, we just push it towards, let's say they start shooting to each other, and that's it, no matter who started first. So then we're going to push sanctions. We're going to maneuver with a lot of restrictions for Russia. And that's how we school Russia. Like if I was a Western ruler, that's how we make them obey.
Right. So this is a treaty that we're going to arrive at next year, which is going to see chunks of Ukraine which are disputed territory, and it's going to be that way for quite a while, is what you're saying, I think.
For now, yeah. For now, it's very profitable. For now, to divide the resources, to deliver a chain of delivery of supplying resources, to make Russia obey and be ally with Western world. So it's just like maneuvering. And Putin actually brought in this conflict, West won because of they do have their interest. They still not kicked out from their plans. Putin, he won. He actually got what he wanted. For now, he can't go forward. So everything is pretty okay for now, seems like. And in the meanwhile, this conflict, we can force Russia to be a little bit obey to West and make them ally to West again.
Right. Igor,
against China.
We're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very much for talking to us. Not a particularly optimistic scenario, perhaps, but
a realistic one.
Perhaps a realistic one.
No, sorry. Yeah, I'm trying to point out on mistakes, not to predict like something bad for. Yeah. So if we can fix these mistakes in this year, so everything should be cool, and we will take those territories back.
Igor, thank you so much for talking to us. Really appreciate your time.
I hope my information would be helpful for you and some.
It's very helpful and very interesting. Thank you for doing it.
Sure.
Thank you. Well, look, I mean, it's hard sometimes to understand his accent, but the gist of what he's saying there is
Ukraine's going to be forced into a settlement, essentially, and or some kind of temporary
also
thing.
That the West has almost been playing that game along the way by holding back the amount of weaponry. Now, I'm sure if you spoke to most countries, they would flatly deny that and say, well, look at the amount of stuff that we're providing. But clearly,
I think it is a feeling in Ukraine. And I've heard it from other places, the suggestion they're just not getting what they want or need. And part of the reason is that they're being pushed into a settlement.
So how long have we been talking to Russia about this and saying, well, look, we won't provide quite enough. So no one's going to win. It's going to be a stalemate and we'll negotiate. How long has that been going on for? If that's what happens?
Well, if that is indeed what's happening, it's an interesting perspective and from a Ukrainian. So there we are. Anyway, next week we're going to be talking about something very different, which is
the planet and how it's getting ruined by by mankind. And COP28 we are up to.
The UN Climate Summit will be underway.
Yeah,
and lots of questions have been raised. But one of the big questions really is how far can whatever does happen in terms of trying to deal with this problem be led by the economics? And if it isn't led by the economics, will it happen at all?
Well, it's happening in the United Arab Emirates.
Well,
I mean, what can you say about that?
No,
they are part of the problem, obviously. I mean, we let them be part of the problem because we buy their fuel.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes, and maybe they have an interest or two in
maintaining that.
You could perhaps think that.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll be talking about that and how the economics stacks up as a way of dealing with this. If you follow the money, will it in the end be the answer? Because there will be economic necessity to get this right. We'll talk about all that next week
on the Y curve. Thanks for listening.
Forgot it.
I did. Too many
Don't
podcasts.
You forget it.
The Y curve next week. See you then.
Bye.
The Y curve.